Hey you guys, we are back once again, and today's video is going to be how to spot an INFP instantly. So in order to do this, first we'll go into the behavioral traits, into how an INFP kind of thinks, acts, and feels, and then afterwards we'll go into the physical traits such as, their hair, their eyes, their body language, and take it from there. Okay, so starting off with the behavioral traits, like any introvert, both INFP men and women, they need their downtime quite a lot. So they need this time to themselves to process how they feel internally, which can actually take a very long time because many of them are emotionally conflicted on the inside. And we'll get into why this is the case later on. So there is a difference between INFP men and women. So let's start with the men first, which is men tend to be a bit more reserved in terms of whether or not they're going to reach out and engage with other people, and they like to be kind of on their own. However, they will engage with other people if someone else takes the initiative to talk to them, right? So basically, they don't like to take the initiative. They prefer if other people went ahead and take the initiative and included them, and then from there they will feel more comfortable and be less shy in engaging with other people. As for INFP women, they are more, they're a little bit more confident. The word I like to use is they're boisterous, to the point of completely lacking restraint and unaware of how they're behaving in terms of societal norms. So for example, if you've ever been at a restaurant and you hear this woman in the background laughing super loudly, to the point of bursting people's eardrums, they can't control their laughter volume, it's and they're disrupting the environment. Most likely it's because they are unaware of how social norms work. So they're kind of unaware that they're being disruptive or they're being rude, because to them they're just oh, I'm having a good time, I'm enjoying myself, and that's all that matters, right? They don't think about the people around them and how their actions might be impacting them. Another example of how INFPs are not unaware of social norms is they may go up to a pregnant woman, right, and start laughing at them and make a joke why are you so fat? I think it's time to cut down on McDonald's. They might say something like that because they aren't aware of social norms, right? They don't get that, oh, it's kind of rude and none of your business to go up to, let's say, a woman who's larger and comment on her weight. That has nothing to do with you, and in most cases you should just not say anything. But then to them, they don't see it that way, right? They just see it as oh, I'm joking around, I'm trying to be funny and humorous, and that's how they connect with people. But then, the way they do it, a lot of people are going to take it the wrong way, and so they're going to be perceived as rude. So in terms of behavioral traits, if you see someone that's kind of violating social norms and is unaware of how their actions affect other people, most likely they're an INFP or INTP. INFPs also have trouble taking action. So along with INFPs like to procrastinate, and this is due to how they view themselves and their self-worth, kind of their own self-confidence, which they lack, in my opinion. And this is also what's responsible for all the internal conflict that goes on inside their head and in their heart. So back to they have trouble taking action, is even though they know that something is bad for them, they may not necessarily take action to rectify the situation, and they may just drag it on and on and on until it becomes too much of a problem that they can't ignore it any longer. So for example, let's say the INFP has a friend that is a bad influence to them and constantly gets them into trouble. The INFP knows that this friend is a bad influence, and that the INFP should, in most cases, just distance themselves away from this friend so that they don't keep getting into trouble. And so the INFP's life is not impacted by this friend. However, because the INFP keeps doubting their own self-worth or self-confidence, they might be oh, if I distance myself from this friend, then I won't have any more friends, or I'll be lonely, and maybe I'm being selfish, right? Maybe I'm being too mean to them. What if I abandon them, and then the friend is going to be upset at me because I no longer want to hang out with them? So these kind of thoughts are what the INFP goes through because of their own internal self-conflict, right? They lack the confidence to be oh, if I drop this friend, I could just make another one. Or this person is a bad influence to me, there are better people out there. And the reason why they lack this is because it could be self-confidence, it could be procrastination, or it could be like they don't believe in themselves. Another reason would be they don't want to hurt others, and so they're kind of conflicted, and so they're willing to stay in like bad relationships or like bad friendships or relationships that may be hurting them. But then to them, they're like, the feelings of other people are more important than the way I feel, so therefore I will sacrifice myself for their benefit. And yeah, which is interesting because INFJs also share the same thing. So it's very funny because INFJs and INFPs are quite compatible in that sense of like emotions, because they like to sacrifice themselves. The difference between them is that INFJs know when to draw the line, whereas INFPs have more of a difficulty drawing that line and taking action. INFPs feel things on a very deep level, and despite having altruistic intentions to make the world a better place, many of them have this like intention or desire, fantasy to make the world a better place. Often they will fall short of being able to do so because others simply do not want the world to be better the way the INFP wants it. So for example, INFP may want everyone to be friendly with one another, saying hello on the street, laughing, being cheerful instead of being depressed all the time. But then to other people, they might be like, this is weird, right? I have things to do, I have bills to pay, I have to go to work, like I don't have time to be happy, and blah, blah, blah. And so the INFP has this kind of like delusional fantasy of how they could make the world a better place. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, it's just that if you were to bring it into a realistic perspective, it will be very difficult to implement because of the other obligations and responsibilities that we have in a day-to-day life that prevent us and take higher priority. They take higher priority, and so that's why certain people will behave in the way they do. Whereas the INFP is just like, even though it takes higher priority, you should still be, happy and cheerful. Like, it should not prevent you from being joyful. And then other people argue with them. Anyway, we can go for days on this topic, but we're going to just move on. Yeah, and so as a result of this, a lot of people don't understand the INFP, and so one of the biggest goals in life for an INFP is to be understood. Because no one understands them, as a result, INFPs are very prone to depression and sadness due to like emotional clogging and feeling like they don't belong in society, right? INFJs can understand this, and that's why, again, INFJs and INFPs are some of the best pairings, I think, in terms of like friendships and understanding each other, because the INFJ understands where the INFP is coming from and is mature enough to be able to implement it in their life. So that's one of the, I think, differences between INFJ and INFP, which is INFJ is basically INFP, except they are more mature in the way that they deal with people and they deal with the world. So not only can an INFJ bring the vision of an INFP to reality, they can do it in a way that works alongside the obligations which everyone needs to worry about, such as finances. INFPs also tend to procrastinate dealing with their emotions, which is why the P in their type, which leads to them running away from a lot of issues. So for example, let's say they break up with someone, right? Instead of taking time to process how they may feel about the breakup, they may just jump into another relationship instantly to try and distract themselves from the pain, only for the same problems to arise over and over and again. And this pattern may continue. They might, keep breaking up with someone and then jump into another relationship to try and distract themselves from the pain, and this might keep going on until finally the INFP gets it and says, okay, maybe the problem isn't the outside world, maybe the problem is something inside me. Like, maybe there's something inside me that I haven't dealt with. And until they come to this realization, then they're going to keep basically running into the same problem in their life, in their relationships. They're going to keep running into like basically brick walls, and they keep banging their head against the brick wall until they like face their demons head on and confront them and find a way to overcome them. And lastly, for behavioral traits, INFPs are geniuses in their own right, with more potential, I believe, than any other F type, just due to the way their mind works and how their personality is. So for example, Shakespeare is an example of an INFP who created his own version of poetry, which was back then, Shakespeare was regarded as an idiot, but then today he's now revered as a genius because of his own creation, because of how the INFP mind works, right? Being able to think of all the possibilities from an emotional perspective and turn it into like their own version of art. The only problem that is basically holding them back from achieving their fullest potential and becoming a genius is their own self-doubt and a lack of, I would say, hardship. So basically, without a lack of hardship, INFPs will constantly be living in this mentality of immaturity, where they believe that the world should be changed instead of I need to change in order to suit the world. And so mature INFPs will have gone through stages of hardship in their life where they're just like, okay, now I know how the world works. I now know that some of my ideals or visions were too unrealistic. Now I need to bring it a bit down and turn it into reality. And the way I do that is to be more realistic in the way that I approach the world or implementing my ideals. The best way to basically overcome their self-doubt is that the INFP should surround themselves with supportive friends or like a supportive circle, like an INFJ or an ENFP, who can help them bring out their internal problems, right? So for example, INFJ is a great pair because INFJs can see into people's souls and they know exactly like what the problem is, right? So they're like, oh, they can see into the soul of the INFP and be like, oh, you are conflicted because you did not face like this demon. Have you thought about that? And the INFP will be like, oh, how did you know that I was dealing with self-doubt? Or how did you know I had low self-esteem, right? It's because the INFJ can see it because they have been there and they have been through it. Another great pairing is ENFP because they are the extroverted type of INFPs, and so they are better able to like understand and relate to what the INFP is going through and cheer them up as well. And on that point, INFPs are also great at cheering people up in one-on-one situations, so not in large groups, because again, they are introverts. They like to keep themselves. They like smaller groups, otherwise it drains their energy. And they're great at this because they're great at emotionally soothing other people and making them feel better, is because they themselves are constantly in like a depressive or like sad state. And so someone who's going through tough times, the INFP knows exactly what to say or like how to soothe them, because they're like, oh, I know exactly what you're going through, right? And this is how I would want to be supported when I'm going through the hardships that I am. And lastly, INFPs need I would say they need like a friendship group or a small circle of like close friends. The only problem with INFPs is that they are so attached as well to their group of circle or friends and supportive like circle, is that they can't distance themselves away from the group. So again, back to the example of the INFP with a bad friend who's an influence. If the INFP is in a circle of friends, because they're so reliant on the support and the opinions of other people, they will put up with less than positive behaviors just so that they can feel accepted, right? Just so they can stave off the feelings of being isolated and lonely. And again, this also has to do with like the INFP not going within and confronting their own demons as to like, why do I rely on other people to not make myself feel lonely, right? Why can't I just, be happy by myself? Or why am I afraid of being isolated? And so because of this, INFPs may stay in like bad circles of friendships, and that's one of their downfalls. Okay, on to the physical traits now. INFPs will have something, most INFPs I know, they have something I like to call mushroom hair, which is basically the hair droops down like this, and then they may have like side bangs or like in the front. Basically the hair droops down and it will cover some part of themselves. So for example, it may cover like one of their eyes, it may cover their ears, it may go all the way down to their shoulders. The hair will cover some part of themselves, and the reason why is this is because they want to hide a certain part of their personality. INFPs don't like people seeing who they truly are. It makes them feel vulnerable and sensitive, and they would prefer to hide it basically to avoid being hurt because they have a very sensitive heart. This is why if you run into, let's say, people who are goth or like emo, people who like dress in full black, most likely this person is INFP. Why? Again, because they want to hide who they truly are, right? They're running from the problems instead of dealing with them. You can think of it as an INFP. The natural state of an INFP is a very caring person with a rainbow for a heart. But then when they go goth, they go full on black because they want to hide or run away from their true nature, which is full of colors and joy. They feel as though they've been betrayed by the world for their beliefs and their ideals, and so instead of embracing, who they really are, which is full of sparkles and color, they then turn to the other side, which is like their dark side. And they're just like, well, if the world won't accept me for the way I am, then I will just be, this conniving, sadistic son of a bitch. Something like that. Yeah. And lastly, for their physical traits, INFPs have something which I like to call sparkly eyes. And this is prevalent in almost all INFPs I know. So the eyes will be kind of like, not really drooping, but they'll be like, not very serious, and they'll be kind of sparkly. So it's, when you look into the eyes of an INFP, you will sense that there's like a sense of innocence in their eyes. And this comes from their altruistic, what's that word? Altruistic ideals of how they want to like help the world, right? So again, INFPs have a very sensitive and soft heart. They want to help people, and so their eyes will reflect this when you look into them. So it'll be very sparkly, and I'll post up some examples so you guys can see what I mean. And basically the sparkliness, I think it comes from like a sense of innocence and naivety about how the world works, right? Because at the core of who they are, INFPs want to help others and make the world a better place. And so, as they say, the eyes are the windows into the soul. And so that's why if you look into the eyes of an INFP, you will see innocence and joy in wanting to help others, which manifest themselves as sparkles. Anyway, so that's my take on INFPs and how you can spot them instantly. Hope you got value out of this video, and I'll see you next time. Hey you guys, hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure to join our Discord community. The link is in the description, where I'm looking forward to having meaningful discussions with you and the other members in the Celestial Sage community. Also, if you'd like this INFJ to act as your personal one-on-one counselor to help you overcome any conflicts or traumas in your life and become the best version of yourself that you possibly can be, just DM me the word SAGE on Discord and we'll take it from there. Alright, hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the Discord, and peace out.